TIFU by accidentally causing chaos at a wedding because of a last-minute wardrobe change. So this happened last weekend, and I'm still trying to piece together what went wrong. Let me take you through the most embarrassing, soul-crushing experience of my life. It all started a few months ago when my cousin Alex announced that he was getting married. Now, Alex and I have always been close. We've spent countless summers together as kids, played sports together, and shared many of our milestones. So, when he invited me to his wedding, I was thrilled. It wasn't just a family gathering, it was a chance to celebrate his big day and show him how much I care. The wedding was set to be held at a beautiful vineyard about 2 hours outside of the city. A scenic location, picturesque, and perfect for a big celebration. I immediately went to work figuring out what I was going to wear. As you know, weddings come with their own set of etiquette rules when it comes to clothing. I didn't want to show up underdressed, so I spent some time looking for the perfect suit. After much deliberation, I settled on a navy blue three-piece suit, white shirt, and a red tie. It was sharp, classy, and respectful. I was feeling good about my choice. The day of the wedding arrived, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. I woke up early to get ready, took a shower, and started putting on my suit. That's when the first hiccup occurred. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I'm terrible with buttons. I mean, it's not that I can't button things up, but I'm a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to lining them up just right. So, while I was dressing, I spent what felt like an eternity getting all the buttons on my suit perfectly aligned. By the time I finished getting ready, I was running late. I had planned to leave an hour before the ceremony started, but I had spent so much time adjusting my suit that I only had about 30 minutes to get to the venue. I quickly grabbed my things and rushed out the door. Now, let's talk about the drive. I live in the city, and the vineyard was a good distance away, so I knew I was going to have to deal with traffic. What I didn't anticipate was the massive detour caused by some construction work on the highway. What was supposed to be a 30-minute drive turned into a 90-minute ordeal. My heart was racing, and I was starting to sweat. The wedding was supposed to start in 15 minutes, and I was nowhere near the venue. I tried calling my cousin Alex to let him know I was going to be late, but of course, he didn't answer. It didn't help that the area had terrible reception, so all I could do was hope I would make it in time. When I finally pulled into the vineyard, I was already frazzled. I parked the car and sprinted towards the entrance, hoping I wouldn't miss the ceremony. As I walked through the beautiful garden leading to the ceremony area, I saw a few of the wedding guests milling about, chatting and laughing. They were all dressed to the nines, looking glamorous. My stress level rose even more. I finally saw my aunt, who greeted me with a warm hug. I was glad to see her, but her next words made me realize I had made a huge mistake. "Oh, you're here just in time," she said. "You know, I almost didn't recognize you for a second. That suit looks so different." I froze. What? What was she talking about? She must have noticed my confused look because she quickly added, "You're wearing the red tie, right? The one that goes with the wedding colors." Now, I don't know if I was so frazzled from the drive or if I had just been too focused on getting there on time, but I completely blinked. I looked down at my tie and froze. It wasn't red. It was a bright, neon orange. I kid you not, somehow, I had picked up the wrong tie. The red tie I had meticulously chosen and planned for was left at home. In its place was a tie I had bought for another occasion that I thought was a subtle orange. But it wasn't subtle at all. It was as if someone had taken a highlighter to it. I felt my stomach drop. My aunt was smiling at me, but I could tell she had caught the slight shift in my expression. I immediately started thinking about how I could fix it. I couldn't go back home, and I didn't have a spare tie in my car. I looked around frantically, hoping someone would lend me a tie, but no one seemed to notice my distress. I brushed it off and told my aunt I was just getting a little hot under the collar. She didn't seem convinced, but she waved me on and I joined the other guests. The ceremony itself was lovely, and I managed to sit through it without too much incident. But as soon as the vows were exchanged and the newlyweds shared their first kiss, I could feel everyone's eyes on me. It was as if my tie had suddenly become a beacon that no one could ignore. My cousin Emma, who had been standing at the altar as one of the bridesmaids, gave me a long, puzzled look. Her eyes slowly drifted to my tie, and I could see her suppressing a laugh. I could feel the sweat beginning to drip down my back. I'm not sure what happened after that. Maybe it was the orange tie that threw me off, or maybe I was so hyper-aware of it that I started making more mistakes. But I accidentally stepped on the bride's veil when it was time for the couple to walk down the aisle after the ceremony. The veil got caught under my shoe, and I tripped forward. I managed to catch myself, but the damage was done. A hush fell over the crowd, and I could feel everyone's eyes on me. The groom, Alex, looked over at me, and I'm sure he had the same horrified expression on his face that I did. At this point, I wanted to crawl into a hole and disappear. But it didn't end there. We all moved to the reception, and I tried to slip into the background, but it seemed like everyone wanted to talk about my tie. My cousin Brian, who has a terrible sense of humor, made a joke about how I was there to brighten up the place with my neon-colored accessory. At this point, I wanted to crawl into a hole and never leave. Then came the worst part, the wedding photos. There I was, standing in the bridal party photo, my bright orange tie shining like a lighthouse in every picture. Everyone else was in elegant, muted colors. There was no escaping it. I could already hear the jokes being made later about my ridiculous tie and my clumsy behavior. Every time someone picked up their phone to take a picture, I could feel the judgment radiating off them. By the time the night ended, I was utterly mortified. I did everything I could to make my departure as smooth as possible, but I don't think I'll ever forget the look Alex gave me as I tried to sneak out before the last dance. He said, "Hey, at least you were memorable." I'm still waiting for the family group chat to blow up with comments about my disastrous tie. I know it's only a matter of time before someone points out how my wardrobe malfunction ruined the photos. So yeah, to fool by wearing a neon orange tie to my cousin's wedding, tripping over the bride's veil, and becoming the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. Never again. Never ever again. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. This happened a few months ago, but it still keeps me up at night in the way only social shame can. So I work in a fairly large tech company where most people are remote, but my team is hybrid. We go into the office 2 days a week, which means there's a strange mix of social awkwardness and forced bonding. Our team lead, Karen, not her real name, unfortunately for the meme, is super into team culture. Think icebreakers, surprise group lunches, team-building bingo. You get the idea. Now, I'm not the most social guy. I prefer quiet, I'm kind of sarcastic, and I have what my friends kindly call a dry sense of humor. That's important. So on one fateful Thursday, we were doing one of Karen's spontaneous, team-sharing moments over lunch. She asks everyone to go around and share one unique or interesting hobby or passion we have outside of work. People are saying stuff like yoga, beekeeping, salsa dancing, improv. When it gets to me, I blink. I genuinely don't have an interesting hobby. I code, I play video games, and I have a standing D&D game with some friends from college. But for some ungodly reason, the words that come out of my mouth are, I attend monthly ritual gatherings in the woods with robes and chanting. I said it deadpan. Absolutely stone-faced. I thought people would laugh. I thought they'd get that it was a joke, maybe a weird one, but something to move on from. But no. The table went quiet. Karen sort of chuckled nervously and said, "Wait, are you serious?" And being the dumbass I am, I just shrugged and said, "It's more serious than people think. We don't really talk about it outside the circle." At that point, one of my coworkers, this guy Dan who thinks conspiracy theories are fun personality traits, went wide-eyed and leaned in like I'd just confessed to knowing who killed JFK. Is it like Wiccan? Or some ancient order? You can tell us. Instead of saying, haha no, I was just messing around, my brain, traitor that it is, doubled down. I made up some absolute nonsense about the path of the ninefold shadow and how we observe the shifting of the veil every third equinox or something. People were fascinated. Like, disturbingly fascinated. I thought I was being clearly sarcastic with phrases like blood moon alignment ceremony and honoring the Ash Mother. Nope. Karen, bless her, said, "That's amazing. We should all strive to have passions that connect us spiritually. Good for you." And moved on. So I thought, cool, that was weird, but at least we're done. Right?
Right? Wrong.
A week later, I get a message from Karen. "Hey, wanted to let you know I was so inspired by your commitment to your beliefs. I have a friend who's really into metaphysical healing and spiritual spaces. She hosts retreats and gatherings sometimes. I mentioned you, and she was so interested in meeting you. Would love to connect you too." Now I'm panicking. I can't exactly say, "Yes, sorry I lied about being in a robe cult in the woods." That's not ideal workplace conduct. But I also don't want to actually go meet some stranger who thinks I'm a high priest of moss worship. So I try to sidestep it and say, "Oh, my circle is kind of private and we don't really interact outside our own group." She replies, "Totally get it. But my friend actually hosts a lot of private ceremonies and said she'd be honored to invite someone like you. She even asked if you'd be willing to speak at a solstice gathering in June."
Speak.
Now I'm deep into it. And in my panic, I make the worst possible decision. I agree. I told myself I'd just go closer to the date or make up an excuse.
But no.
Karen follows up. She sets a date, sends me an address. And on a Saturday in June, I find myself standing outside a literal forest retreat center in upstate New York with a printed Google Maps route and a knot of dread in my stomach. I almost bailed. I sat in the car and thought, just leave. Say you got sick. But then Karen texts me a selfie from inside the damn event. She came. She's inside. She's excited to support me. So now I'm trapped. I walk in and it's not bad. There are people in flowing clothes, incense, quiet instrumental music. There's an altar with crystals and herbs and a very intimidating woman with silver hair and a staff. The friend, I assume. She sees me, lights up, and says, "You must be the shadow guide Karen told me about." My mouth says, "Yes." My soul says, "Why have you done this?" I get introduced to a few people, all of whom treat me like I'm some kind of spiritual prodigy. They start asking me things like how I interpret the silence between veils, or what the fourth breath of the lunar triad represents. I panic. I say, "We don't share meanings. We believe meaning is found in not knowing." They nod. They love it. So now, somehow, I'm giving a blessing of dusk. I walk to the center of this wooden circle area, surrounded by very peaceful, trusting strangers and one very enthusiastic boss, and I start making stuff up. Like, straight-up improv theater nonsense. I say things like, "As the raven circles thrice, so do our spirits spiral inward." I wave my arms. I chant Malkar, Suvendral. I drop to one knee and whisper something about the flame within the bark. People start humming along. Someone cries. I feel like I'm in a dream, or a cult, or a psychiatric evaluation. Afterward, I get hugs. The silver-haired woman says I have the gift. Karen looks at me like I just walked on water. I go home in stunned silence and spend the next 2 weeks waiting for HR to call or for someone to figure out it was all fake. But it never happens. Instead, Karen gives me a handwritten card saying how thankful she is to work with someone so deeply connected and authentic. She tells the whole team that I spoke at a spiritual retreat and encourages everyone to find their sacred spaces.
So now, I'm the office cult guy.
People come to me for advice about grounding rituals and energy alignment. Dan thinks I can read auras. Someone left a jar of moon water on my desk. I don't know how to escape. I think I started a religion by accident. Please, if you ever have the chance to make a weird joke during a work lunch, just say you collect coins or something. This happened about 2 months ago, and I still can't walk by my neighbor's apartment without breaking into a cold sweat. So, I live in a relatively quiet apartment building where people mostly keep to themselves. Except for Mrs. Ellison. She's a sweet, chatty, 70-something-year-old widow who lives 2 doors down from me. We've had the occasional hallway conversation, and once I helped her carry her new TV upstairs, so we were on friendly terms, but not close. She always baked cookies during holidays and left little paper notes with them. Like, "May your days be merry and bright, Mrs. E," taped to a Ziploc bag of shortbread. One Thursday afternoon, I was coming back from work early, completely wiped out, and I saw her struggling with like 10 grocery bags at once. Naturally, I offered to help. She looked incredibly grateful and handed me most of the bags. We walked together to her apartment, and I followed her inside to set them on the counter. Her place was like a grandmother museum, doilies, knickknacks, pictures of grandkids everywhere, a faint smell of lavender and old paper. As I was setting down the groceries, she asked if I'd mind staying for a second to open a jar for her. I was like, of course, no problem, because again, she's old and sweet and I had nowhere to be. One jar led to another. Then to her asking if I could help her set up a Zoom call for her family gathering on Sunday because technology is a foreign language. I agreed. I set up Zoom for my mom 100 times. I figured I'd write down the steps and be done with it. Fast forward to Sunday. She knocks on my door around 1 p.m., looking frazzled in a black blouse and a string of pearls. I thought, okay, a bit fancy for a family gathering, but sure. She's like, "Can you help me get it going now? I think I messed up the link." We get to her place. She's got her laptop open on the dining table, and I see she's got a Zoom meeting scheduled for 1:30 p.m. titled, "In Loving Memory of Harold Ellison." I freeze for a second. Turns out this wasn't just a family call. It was a memorial for her late husband, her virtual funeral. The man died years ago, but due to COVID, the family never got to do a proper ceremony. They decided now was the time. I'm already uncomfortable, but I try to play it cool. I set up the call, make sure her mic and camera work, show her the mute/unmute button, and she tells me she just needs me to stay until it starts, to make sure nothing goes wrong.
Okay.
I can do that. I sit awkwardly on her floral print couch while she paces and keeps smoothing her skirt. At 1:30 on the dot, people start entering the Zoom. I recognize no one, obviously. Names start popping up. Ellison_cousin_Beth, grandson_, uncle_. Cameras turn on. Everyone's in black. People look solemn. Some are lighting candles. Mrs. Ellison sits in front of the screen and waves. Everyone starts saying hello, tearful greetings, "You look lovely, Annie Mae," that sort of thing. And then, suddenly someone goes, "Who's that in the background?" I look up. It's me, in a neon green t-shirt that says "Eat, Sleep, Game, Repeat," holding a can of Dr. Pepper like a clueless idiot. Dead center in the webcam's view. Mrs. Ellison turns around, startled, and realizes I'm in frame. She gasps and goes, "Oh, this is my neighbor. He's just helping me with the technical stuff." She waves her hand vaguely. I try to slide out of frame like Homer into the bushes, but in doing so, I trip over a decorative footstool shaped like a sheep and knock into a side table holding a vase of artificial flowers. It crashes to the ground with the loudest clatter I've ever heard. Every single person on that Zoom goes dead silent. I swear I heard someone gasp audibly. The awkwardness was nuclear. Mrs. Ellison, bless her, puts on this brittle smile and says, "He's very helpful. Just a little clumsy." Like she's trying to apologize for her pet raccoon. I whisper 1,000 apologies, grab the vase, miraculously unbroken, and try to retreat. But before I can escape, her cousin, who's apparently the host of the memorial, says, "Well, since you're here, would you like to say a few words about Harold?" I think it was meant as a joke. Like a, haha, who's the stranger, maybe he knew Harold kind of thing. But then Mrs. Ellison looks at me and nods like, "Go on." Now, I have never met Harold. I have seen one blurry black and white photo of him on the hallway wall. That's it. So I panic. I stand there like a deer in a funeral home spotlight and say, Harold seemed like a great guy. He must have been, kind and generous considering how wonderful his wife is. I meant it as a compliment, a save. But someone, maybe Uncle Don, goes, "Oh, so you did know Harold?" with a very pointed tone. And I, For some godforsaken reason, nod.
Why?
Why did I nod? So now I'm caught in a lie, in the middle of a virtual funeral, while 30 grieving strangers are staring at me through their webcams. Someone asks, from where? And I just say, we met in the building. Another voice says, but Harold never lived there. He passed in 2020. Now everyone's confused. Mrs. Ellison looks at me like she doesn't even know who I am anymore. My panic response? I blurt out, I think I have the wrong Harold. That was the exact moment the Wi-Fi glitched and her screen froze, on my face, mid-sentence, mouth half open like a deranged clown. I took that as a sign from the universe and left. I said, I think it's working now. I'll leave you to it. And bolted out the door like it was on fire. Later that evening, I found a small Tupperware of shortbread cookies outside my door with a note that just said, Thank you, Mrs. E. No smiley face, no signature flourish. Just, thank you. I have not spoken to her since. I still don't know if I ruined Harold's funeral or somehow enhanced it by being the unintentional comedic relief. Either way, I'm now that guy in at least 30 people's stories of the weirdest memorial service they've ever attended. And I never want to touch Zoom again. TIFU by accidentally catfishing my entire office and almost getting myself fired for cyber harassment of myself. Let me start by saying I am not tech-savvy. I work in a fairly average-sized marketing firm where half the people pretend to be way more competent with social media than they actually are, me included. I'm in charge of email campaigns and internal analytics, basically the data gremlin who lives in spreadsheets and cries when someone mentions TikTok strategy. So about 3 months ago, our company's HR manager, Dana, had this brilliant idea to foster more cross-departmental connection by creating an internal social platform, kind of like Slack meets Facebook. She called it Work Mingle. Think bios, statuses, profile pics, mood updates. Like a middle school MySpace page with corporate branding. We were supposed to log on, share small wins, post memes, react to each other's work updates, whatever. It was supposed to be fun, team building,
Wholesome.
and for the first couple of weeks, it was mostly dead, except for the aggressively optimistic interns posting, "You got this," gifs every morning and our CFO randomly quoting Stoic philosophy. Then, in a moment of sleep-deprived idiocy, I created a fake profile.
Why?
Because of Linda. Linda works in sales and has the personality of a Labrador who just discovered Red Bull. She's lovely. She also kept asking why I hadn't posted anything on Work Mingle and started this fake competition for most engaging teammate. I was trying to fly under the radar, but got sick of being badgered. So I created a fake profile just to mess with the whole thing. I figured I'd troll her a little by making a mystery employee, someone who worked in satellite marketing on the East Coast, but no one had met. I named him Caleb J. Gave him a blurry but handsome profile picture. I pulled off some old royalty-free stock photo site. I think I searched casual professional man smiling in office, wrote up a vague bio about being passionate about brand authenticity and enjoying craft beers and jazz fusion, and posted once, excited to be part of the team. Let's crush Q2. The man became a legend in a week. People started replying to Caleb, asking him questions, tagging him in posts. Someone made a Caleb meme. Linda welcomed him personally and said she hoped he'd join the Friday Zoom happy hour. I tried to quietly kill him off by not posting anything else, but then someone, "I'm looking at you, Linda," met him. I panicked. I responded in character. This went on for weeks. Caleb became kind of a corporate folk hero. He posted just enough to seem mysterious and cool, with little motivational comments like, "Love the hustle here," and "Teamwork makes the dream work." He flirted lightly with Linda, non-committally. Posted one selfie from a conference in Boston, read, another stock photo of a man at a podium, and occasionally dropped hot takes about remote work being the future. The kicker? People started trying to find Caleb in the system, like IT-level searches. Because he was never in meetings, never on calls, never showed up in the directory. And apparently, our East Coast marketing team is 2 people, and neither of them is named Caleb. Dana got wind and reached out to Mimi for help investigating the account since I handled user metrics. I should have come clean, obviously. Any sane person would. But by then, it had become a full-blown experiment. I told her Caleb was working on a special project and that maybe his account had weird settings because of external vendor status or something. She bought it. But then came the incident. Linda invited Caleb to a Zoom coffee break. And when he didn't respond, she sent another DM. I replied, politely declining and saying Caleb was in transit. She replied with a selfie of her holding a coffee cup and captioned it, "Guess I'll drink alone then. Sad face." I, stupidly, responded with a gif of Jim Halpert shrugging. Apparently, this crossed some kind of line. The next day, I was summoned by HR for digital misconduct. Someone had reported Caleb for ghosting and inappropriate interpersonal interactions. I sat in that gray-carpeted conference room as Dana and our legal guy grilled me about Caleb's employment status, his real identity, and why he didn't have a payroll record. I caved. Told the whole story. Every mortifying detail. Linda's selfie. The fake conference posts. The jazz fusion. Even the gif. They didn't fire me. Probably because I cried halfway through the confession, and legal guy started laughing so hard he had to leave the room. But I did have to write an apology letter to the entire office, explaining that Caleb was a fictional construct designed to highlight the absurdities of performative workplace culture. Dana actually nodded like I'd made a brilliant philosophical point. I now have to attend weekly digital ethics training and am banned from creating any non-verified user accounts on our systems for the next calendar year. Linda hasn't spoken to me since. But she did print out a screenshot of Caleb's profile and stick it on the office fridge under a magnet that says, "In loving memory." Every Friday, someone leaves a beer next to it. Craft, of course. R.I.P. Caleb J. You were too pure for this corporate world. This happened last month, and I'm only just now ready to talk about it. I work for a medium-sized marketing firm that decided to host a mandatory wellness and team bonding retreat in the woods of Oregon. They rented out this eco-friendly lodge thing for a weekend, think yoga mats, tofu burgers, and lots of herbal tea. I'm not really a nature guy, but I figured, hey, it's a weekend away from email. The schedule had everything from guided meditation to vision board manifestation. I'm not usually into that stuff, but it beat spreadsheet hell. The issue started during a block on exploring personal mantras. We were supposed to create a unique, empowering phrase that represented our personal journey. Mine was, "I am the vessel through which chaos becomes clarity." It sounded cool, right? Like something you'd see on a shirt worn by a hot yoga instructor with a mysterious past. Anyway, we each had to share our mantra in front of the group, then explain it. When my turn came, I stood up and said it in my most solemn voice. People actually leaned in. So I riffed. I said something like, "Chaos isn't just around us, it's in us. But we're not victims of it. We're the filters. We take chaos and make it into purpose. We are the purpose." I thought I was just being poetic. But apparently I had unlocked some kind of primal energy in the room. People started nodding. One woman teared up. The HR manager, let me repeat, the HR manager, stood up and whispered, "Yes, we are the vessel." At first, I thought everyone was just being polite. You know how people get on retreats. But over the next few hours, people started coming up to me in private, asking me to explain more. One guy, Tim from accounting, asked if I had a text or a book he could read. I thought he was kidding. So I said, "I mean, it's all around us. You just have to listen." That's when I messed up. Because apparently Tim took that to heart. He spent the next night writing down what he called the 10 vessels of clarity. I found them taped to the door of the dining hall. They included things like cleanse yourself of digital chaos and honor the divine filter within. Honestly, not bad. But also, what? Things escalated. Fast. On day 3, people stopped using their real names and started introducing themselves as vessels. Like Vessel Jonathan and Vessel Marcy. They created a chant based on my mantra and sang it before meals. I'm not even joking, they made a hand symbol. Like a triangle with your fingers. I asked them what it meant, and one lady just said, "It is the flow." So I tried to shut it down. I told everyone I was just spitballing. that I don't believe in any of it, and I literally made it up because I panicked in front of a group. But instead of being disappointed, they looked proud. One of them said, "You passed the first test." Denial of the vessel is the first step to embodiment. It was like watching a car skid on ice. You know it's going to crash, but you're helpless to stop it. By the last day of the retreat, the group had elected me Conduit Prime. They made me a robe. Out of yoga mats. I managed to escape when I faked a family emergency and called a lift to the nearest town. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Back at the office, I was hoping everything would go back to normal. But now, a solid third of my coworkers greet me by placing a hand on their chest and whispering, "Clarity guide you." Someone put a salt circle around my desk. HR won't even talk to me unless it's in the vessel's light. And yesterday, I got an email titled, "On this week's flow, embracing the third vibration," with a PowerPoint that had my face on slide 1. It gets worse. Apparently, someone made a website, vesselofclarity.org. There's a forum with over 700 users. They're planning a Clarity Convergence in Sedona this summer. The keynote speaker is listed as the original conduit. That's me. I never agreed to that. I've tried everything. I told everyone the truth. I even brought my mom in to say I was a C-section baby who cried because he hated bats. But all that did was inspire a new vessel poem titled "The Water Is Not My Origin." At this point, I'm just surviving. I've stopped trying to explain or protest. I nod when someone offers me a dried mango cleansed by intention. I wear headphones 90% of the time and have taken to eating lunch in my car. One coworker left a hand-carved filter totem on my windshield. The CEO finally noticed something was off and scheduled a meeting with me. I was ready to explain the whole situation and beg for help. But halfway through, he leaned in and said, "Between us, the chaos is loud. But you helped me hear the signal. Thank you, conduit." So yeah, TIFU by accidentally becoming a spiritual figurehead to my coworkers, creating a philosophy I don't believe in, and being too charismatic while under pressure in a room full of emotionally vulnerable marketing professionals on mushrooms. I mean herbal tea. TIFU actually happened this past Thanksgiving, and it's taken this long for the dust to settle enough that I can process what I did. It wasn't malicious, I swear. But as with all great family catastrophes, it started with a glass of wine, some passive-aggressive remarks, and a well-meaning attempt to connect the dots. I, 31M, have always felt like the black sheep of my family. Not in the got-arrested way, but in the subtle "are we sure he's related" kind of way. I'm shorter than both my parents, I tan easily while they're pale, my hair is darker, and my nose has a completely different shape. My family always made jokes about the milkman or the mailman, standard, awkward uncle humor. It never really bothered me. I rolled with it. Anyway, Thanksgiving rolls around, and this year my parents hosted. My sister, 34F, her husband, and their 2 kids were there. My cousin Emily, 29F, came with her fiancé. My dad made his famous smoked turkey, my mom fussed over everyone as usual, and we all did the dance of pretending to like cranberry sauce while gossiping about people who weren't there. Dinner was going great, like suspiciously great. I had brought a really nice bottle of red as a peace offering for always showing up late or forgetting birthdays. Everyone was sipping, loosening up. That's when my dad starts telling old stories, including the one where he and mom almost split up in the late 90s, but worked it out. Now, this has always been a bit of a mysterious period in our family lore. I was maybe 5 or 6 when it happened. They never said why they almost divorced, just that they went through a rough patch. My sister remembers more from that time and always looked weirdly tense when it came up. So I, drunk on wine and sentimentality, decide to break the tension with what I thought was a harmless joke. I said, "Well, considering I look like I was swapped at the hospital, maybe that rough patch involved a little extracurricular activity, huh, Mom?" Record scratch. Forks clinked on plates. Silence. My mom looked like someone had just thrown a bucket of cold water on her. My dad suddenly got very interested in his stuffing. My sister muttered, "Jesus Christ," and immediately reached for her wine. I tried to laugh it off, but the atmosphere had flipped. Mom said, "That's not funny," in this low voice I've never heard from her before. Now, at this point, a normal person would have shut up. A normal person would have pivoted to football or pie. But not me. No, I had to go full Sherlock Holmes. I said something like, "Come on, we've all thought it. I mean, just look at me. Maybe I've got some mysterious genetics. Should I get a 23andMe and finally solve the mystery?" And my mom stood up.
Not fast. Slowly.
Like every joint in her body weighed 100 pounds. She walked out of the room. My dad just sat there, eyes fixed on his plate, jaw clenched so tight I could hear his teeth grinding.
My sister was staring daggers at me.
Then she said, "Nice job, asshole." I'm trying to figure out what the hell is happening when my cousin Emily, of all people, goes, "Wait, is this about the thing Mom told me at Grandma's funeral?" Everyone turns to her. "What thing?" I ask. My cousin, clearly a few drinks in herself, says that your mom had an affair with her professor in '93 and no one ever talked about it again. That thing. You could hear a pin drop. My dad quietly got up and walked out. My sister got up and started clearing plates with the kind of violent clanking that makes Carell shiver. Emily turned bright red and tried to backpedal, but the nuclear bomb had already gone off. I just sat there. Turns out the family had known. Well, some of them. My mom had had a short affair with a professor while doing her master's. It was during the rough patch. My dad found out. They separated for a few months, but ultimately decided to stay together. My mom never confirmed if I was biologically my dad's. He raised me as his own and apparently made it clear he didn't want to talk about it ever again. The only reason Emily even knew was because her mom, my aunt, had drunkenly told her years later, assuming it was old news. My sister had pieced it together over time, but respected the unspoken rule of silence. And I, apparently the only one who didn't know, managed to stumble into this landmine with all the grace of a drunk elephant. Dinner ended early. Dessert never came out. My parents didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. My sister sent me a single text, "Hope it was worth it." Eventually, my mom called. We had a long, very emotional conversation. She said she's lived with guilt for decades and never meant to lie, but once they decided to move on, pretending became easier than confronting the mess. Asked if my dad was really okay with it, and she just said, "He made a choice to love you. That's always been real." I broke down. We both did. I reached out to my dad. He wasn't angry, just tired. He said he never wanted me to feel like I wasn't his son because in every way that matters, I am. But yeah, my joke ripped the Band-Aid off something that was never fully healed. I did end up doing a DNA test. I haven't opened the results yet. They're sitting in my email inbox like Pandora's box with a Wi-Fi signal. I'm not sure if I ever will. I don't know if I want to know. Because now I do know something more important, that I was chosen. That my dad chose to raise me, love me, and be there every single time I needed him. Still, I will never joke about family secrets again. Not even a little. Not even as a joke. Especially not during holiday dinners. This happened a few months ago, but the fallout is still echoing in my life and probably will for a long, long time. So for context, I, 25M, live in a mid-sized city in the Midwest, and I'm in between jobs. By in between, I mean I got laid off, I've been coasting on savings and the occasional odd job, and I eat a lot of ramen. My apartment is basically one IKEA shelf away from being condemned. I do have a degree in linguistics, which will be ironic later. Now, here's where the mistake starts. There's a large university campus in my city, and they host all kinds of student events open to the public. Some even include free food. I'm not technically a student, but if you dress like a grad student, slightly disheveled, carrying a reusable coffee cup, and pretending to be tired all the time, no one questions you. I've attended probably 50 of these events over the last year. One day, I stumbled into a Global Connections night at the Student Center. They were giving out cultural food samples and hosting a speed meeting mixer. It was supposed to connect American students with international students. It looked like a buffet of pad thai, pierogi, and injera, so I was already halfway to the food table when someone stopped me. A smiling woman with a clipboard. "Hi. What country are you visiting from?" I panicked. I have this thing where I can't lie unless I'm all in. If I commit, it's 110%. So what did I say? Estonia, I blurted out. Now, I have never been to Estonia. But I do know where it is, I know it's not well known, and I once had a short obsession with Baltic languages in college. I figured that would be obscure enough that nobody would dig too deep. Plus, Estonian kind of sounds like a fake language to Americans. No offense to Estonians, it's just not top of mind for anyone. She lit up. Oh, amazing. We almost never get visitors from Estonia. You're our first this year. What's your name? Another bad habit. When I lie, I double down instead of backing out. So, I gave a name that sounded just believable enough. Tarmo Liv.
Boom.
Fake identity established. I grabbed my free plate of food and thought I was done.
Wrong.
She introduced me to the event coordinator, then a professor, then someone from the International Student Office. They were thrilled. Apparently, the university was trying to boost their Northern and Eastern European exchange numbers, and I was now the accidental poster child. I kept thinking I'd bail. I'll ghost them tomorrow, I told myself. But then someone invited me to a small Estonian brunch at the professor's house next weekend. Homemade Verwurst and potato salad. Free food. I said yes. So, the next weekend I show up. There are like 8 people there, me, 2 professors, 3 exchange students from Latvia and Poland, the professor's husband, and a university media intern. Apparently, this brunch was also a mini feature for the university newsletter on cultural exchange. I should have said no. But they already printed my name, Tarmo Liv. I was in too deep. They interviewed me, asked about my hometown. I Googled one the night before, Parnu. Asked about differences in culture, language, even politics. I bullshitted my way through with vague answers and charm. The Polish student side-eyed me once, but didn't say anything. Then the professor's husband asked if I'd heard about a recent EU student travel grant, and if it had affected my studies. I said yes, very helpful. He nodded. Apparently, this man was also a donor to the university's International Student Scholarship Fund. He was delighted to see it working. I had no idea what was coming. The story went out. There's now a photo of me in their monthly newsletter, holding a plate of Estonian sausage and grinning like a dumbass with the caption, Tarmo Liv shares the spirit of Estonia with the campus community. My fake name. My fake life. It was out there. I thought, okay, awkward, but I'll just vanish. Let them think Tarmo graduated or something. But then came the email. It was from a university official. Tarmo, we were so moved by your story. We've nominated you for the Midwestern Global Student of the Year Award. It includes a trip to a conference in Toronto next month. You know that moment when your stomach feels like it drops into your knees?
Yeah, that.
I tried to politely decline. Said I had visa complications. They offered help. I said I was transferring back home. They asked which Estonian university to send my records to. I ghosted. And that should have been it.
Should have been the end.
But then 2 weeks later, the actual Estonian consulate called the university. Someone at the university had proudly contacted them to build connections and share the success story of one of their students. The consulate had no record of a Tarmo Liv studying abroad. And suddenly, this little side hustle for free food turned into a possible international identity fraud investigation. They launched an inquiry. I didn't know this part until much later, but they actually called the FBI to ask if someone was impersonating Estonian citizens on student visas. My photo was circulated. Someone in one of the university departments recognized me, not as Tarmo, but as that guy who came to our local poetry slam and worked the bar sometimes. I got an official letter from the university threatening legal action if I didn't come forward. So I lawyered up, thank you legal aid, and confessed everything. No fake passport, no stolen identity, just one dumb Midwestern dude with too much time and not enough pasta. I didn't get arrested, thankfully. But I'm now banned from all campus events, possibly for life. They also sent a formal apology to the Estonian consulate, along with a retraction of the newsletter article. I saw it. Correction. Tarmo Liv is not a real person. The worst part? The Polish student knew the whole time. He messaged me later on Instagram like, I thought Estonians don't usually say Zie vash storavai when they toast. Dude had been watching me flounder and decided to let the natural consequences play out like some kind of karmic deity.
So yeah,
I started this whole thing for a plate of dumplings and ended up nearly triggering an international diplomatic headache. I now eat at home. This happened last year, but it still haunts me every time I see a white robe or hear the word commune. It all started with a girl named Casey. She worked in the same building as me, one floor up in some vegan wellness startup. We bumped into each other a few times in the lobby, and I was smitten. She had this calm, radiant vibe, like she'd just walked out of a meditation retreat. One day, I complimented her on her crystal necklace. I thought it was just a cool rock, and somehow that sparked a whole conversation about energy fields and soul alignment. I just nodded like I knew what she meant. Over the next couple weeks, we started getting coffee together. It was the most innocent, pure crush I'd had since high school. I didn't want to screw it up. Then she invited me to this gathering. She said it was out in the countryside, super chill, and that her friends were hosting it. I thought it was like a party. Or a bonfire. Or, at worst, some drum circle with hummus and kombucha. I was so wrong. I asked, should I bring anything? And she said, just an open mind. That should have been red flag number 1. So, I drive us out there Friday afternoon. It's a couple hours from the city, past where GPS gets spotty. The place is secluded, surrounded by dense woods, with these little wooden cabins dotting the property. When we get out, people in flowing white clothes greet us with unnervingly wide smiles. Everyone is barefoot. I joke, did I just walk onto the set of Midsummer? No one laughs. Red flag number 2. They ask me to cleanse before entering. I'm thinking hand sanitizer or something.
nope.
A guy named Cedar, not kidding, sprinkles herbs on me and chants while walking in a circle. I'm so far and over my head, but Casey is beaming, like this is the most beautiful thing in the world. We're assigned cabins. Casey and I are separate, which crushed me, but probably a blessing. I get a tiny room with no locks and a thin mattress on a wooden slab. No phone service, no Wi-Fi. There's a binder on the bed titled Asterisk, The Path to Purity, Initiation Guide. Asterisk, I skim it, thinking it's a joke. It's not. That night, there's a communal welcome feast. Everyone sits in a circle on the floor. No utensils, just hands. Lots of lentils and root vegetables. They introduce me as a new seeker and ask me to share my intentions. I panic and say, to connect more deeply with the earth? Everyone nods sagely. A woman with dreadlocks kisses my forehead. Then it gets weird. They bring out this big copper bowl and start chanting. A guy drops a lock of his hair into the bowl. I glance at Casey, who's fully into it, eyes closed, swaying. Then someone hands me scissors and says, an offering of self is an offering of truth. Long story short, I now have a bald patch on the back of my head. The next morning starts at sunrise with purification. This involves being woken up by someone ringing a bell and gently banging on a gong. We gather outside to do naked yoga. I consider faking a stomach bug, but Casey's already stripping, so I'm like, why fellow? I strip. I yoga. I cry internally. Breakfast is silence-based. We eat in total quiet, meditating on every bite. The guy next to me is literally crying into his millet. I accidentally crunch too loudly on a carrot and get a death glare from across the table. After breakfast, we till the sacred garden. I'm handed a rusty trowel and asked to dig with intention. A girl named Lark tells me the soil has memories and that I'm disturbing its trauma. I apologize.
To the soil.
Day 3. I haven't pooped in 48 hours. I miss my phone, my bed, and processed sugar. I confess to Casey that I thought this was just a retreat, not whatever this is. She laughs like I'm being silly and says, we're not a cult, we're a community of awakening. I make the mistake of asking what the difference is. Next thing I know, I'm in a recalibration circle with 3 people asking me if I feel resistance to transcendence. I say I think I left my resistance in my car, and they don't laugh. Again, on the final night, There's the clarity right. I have no idea what to expect anymore. Everyone gathers around a massive bonfire. There's drumming, chanting, more herbs. They pass around this drink called spirit breath, which smells like fermented moss and battery acid. I pretend to sip it, but I guess not fast enough because a guy named Ocean notices and whispers, "The spirit sees fear." Then the chanting kicks up a notch. People start moaning. Someone strips off their robe and runs into the woods screaming about rebirth. I make direct eye contact with Casey. Her pupils are huge. I realize, oh God, that wasn't herbal tea. I bolt. I run through the woods in the dark, half naked, tripping over roots and branches, trying to remember where the hell I parked. I find the gravel road, and eventually my car, which is miraculously untouched. I dive in and peel out like I'm being chased by demons, which, emotionally, I was. I didn't even have shoes on. The next morning, I wake up in my apartment, covered in bug bites, robe still on, hair smelling like sage and regret. I check my phone and have 3 messages from Casey. The last one just says, "Sad you weren't ready." I never replied. I also changed office buildings. Hey, friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. This happened a few months ago, and I still wake up in cold sweats from the embarrassment. I, 29M, had just moved to a new city for work. I didn't know anyone, didn't have any family close by, and my coworkers were mostly older and not super social. So I figured I'd jump on Tinder to meet people, maybe make some friends, or, whatever. I matched with this girl, Sophie, not her real name. She was funny, cute, and had a profile that didn't scream influencer, which in this city is rare. We messaged for a few days, and she suggested we meet up on Saturday. I was all for it, but then she threw me a curveball. She said, "Actually, my family is having this outdoor gathering on Saturday, like a celebration of life thing for my uncle, who passed away a few months ago. It's not super formal, just family and close friends, and there will be food and drinks. You could come if that's not too weird." In hindsight, I should have said yes, that is weird, but I was new in town, lonely, and a little too eager to meet people. Plus, she said it was chill, and I assumed this would be more like a barbecue with a slideshow, and less like a somber black suit funeral. To be polite and to make a good impression, I told her I'd bring something. She said, "Bring whatever you like." I don't know why, but my dumbass brain interpreted that as bring alcohol. So I stopped by a liquor store on the way and picked up a mid-shelf bottle of tequila. Figured it would be a good icebreaker. I arrive at the address she gave me, which is this big, older house with a wraparound porch. There are a few cars out front, but no noise, no music, no people outside. I assumed it was one of those parties that takes a while to get going. I knock on the door, and Sophie answers, wearing all black. I was in jeans and a gray button-up, holding a paper bag with tequila, like an idiot. She looked surprised, maybe even nervous. "Oh, hey, you're early." I wasn't. It was 3 o'clock on the She ushers me in quickly, and I immediately realize this is not a casual backyard hangout. The living room is full of people sitting quietly, all dressed in black or dark clothing. Some are sniffling. There's a large photo of a man in his 60s on an easel at the front of the room, surrounded by candles and flowers. There's a woman giving a speech. She stops mid-sentence and turns to look at me. Everyone turns. I'm standing in the doorway, holding a bottle of tequila, like I'm about to host a drinking game. I panic. I blurt out, I think I have the wrong house." Sophie steps in and says, No, he's with me," and guides me to the kitchen. We stand there in silence for a few seconds. She whispers, "Sorry, I didn't think the speeches would still be going on. I thought we'd be in the backyard already." I ask, "Should I just go?" She says no, insists it's fine, and that the backyard part is starting soon. We wait about 15 minutes. I don't know what to do with the tequila, so I just hold it like a bouquet of shame. Eventually, people start filtering into the backyard where they've set up tables and food. It's potluck style. Someone brought a big tray of lasagna. Another person made a bunch of deviled eggs. I'm still holding tequila. Sophie introduces me to her parents. I try to hide the bottle behind my leg like a naughty child. Her dad nods and gives me a firm handshake. Her mom gives me that tight-lipped smile that says, "Who is this?" To make matters worse, I haven't eaten all day. Sophie points me toward the food table. I pile a plate with whatever I can get and grab a red Solo cup. I pour a small bit of the tequila in, hoping to at least make it look like I meant for it to be casual. Somehow, I end up seated next to Sophie's great Aunt Linda. She's like 90, tiny, and sharp as a tack. She eyes my cup and says, "That whiskey." I say, "Tequila." She nods, then leans over and whispers, "Put a splash in mine." I don't know if it was the stress or hunger or just Linda's chaotic energy, but I pour her a generous splash. And then it snowballs. Linda raises her cup and says salute, loud enough for others to notice. Someone else asks, "What are you drinking?" Next thing I know, I'm the unofficial bartender of this celebration of life. Sophie looks both amused and horrified. Her cousin comes over and says, "Hey man, thanks for loosening up the vibe. It was kinda heavy earlier." And for a brief moment, I think maybe I've saved this. Maybe I've somehow reverse crashed this funeral into a positive. Then Sophie's uncle, not the dead one obviously, starts telling a story about the deceased. It's a heartfelt story. People quiet down to listen. Halfway through, Linda leans over and says very loudly, "If I go next, you better bring this guy and that tequila." People laugh, but not in a good way. Like, uncomfortable laughter. Sophie gets up and goes inside. I follow her a few minutes later. She's standing in the kitchen, looking mortified. "I think you should probably head out," she says gently. I apologize profusely. I tell her I misunderstood, that I thought it was a backyard celebration with drinks and music. She says, "It's okay, I just didn't think it would feel this weird." I left the tequila behind. I thought it was the least I could do. The next day, I texted her an apology and said I hoped the rest of the day went well. She replied, "Thanks. It was a nice send-off. My mom said you have kind eyes." Never saw her again. But I do sometimes think about Great Aunt Linda. Hope she's still out there, raising hell. This happened last weekend, and I'm still fielding texts and awkward glances every time I step outside. I'm 33, single, living in a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside of Portland. I've lived here for 3 years now, mostly keeping to myself, which works fine since the neighborhood is a mix of retirees, young families, and people like me who just want to avoid HOA drama and mow their lawn once a week. Across the street is a sweet older couple, the Kindlers. They've got a grown daughter, Hannah, who visits once in a while, and apparently, it was her 30th birthday last Saturday. I didn't know this until I glanced out my window around 5 p.m. and saw the cul-de-sac slowly filling with parked cars, balloons, and what looked like one of those trendy food trucks. They set up a canopy tent, string lights, and a ridiculous number of flamingos and tropical decorations. Clearly a luau theme.
Cool.
Good for her. I genuinely had no problem with it and even considered walking over to say hi, but I didn't want to be the awkward neighbor who thinks he's invited to everything. Instead, I ordered Thai food, cracked a beer, and posted up on my back deck with some music and my Kindle. Around 8:30 p.m., I hear shouting. Not angry shouting, excited, drunken shouting. Nothing alarming, just that late party energy. A group of about 6 people had moved to the driveway, and someone brought out a karaoke machine. Now, I don't mean a small, indoor karaoke box. I mean a full-on portable PA system with a microphone and speaker that projected all the way through my double-paned windows. At first, it was kind of fun. A drunk guy was butchering Mr. Brightside with the confidence of someone who's never heard the song sober. But by song 4, the novelty wore off. The volume was absurd, and I couldn't hear my own thoughts, let alone my audiobook. I tried to chill. I really did. It's a birthday party, it's the weekend, they're not doing anything illegal. So I closed my windows and tried to ride it out. Then, sometime around 10:15 p.m., I hear what I thought was a woman screaming. A really high-pitched, Sharp scream followed by what sounded like shouting and running. Now I'm standing in my living room like an idiot with one curtain pulled back, peeking across the street. I couldn't see much. The lights on their side were dimmer now, but I definitely saw someone lying on the lawn. That's when my brain said, "Welp, time to call 911. I didn't freak out on the call. I just told the dispatcher that I thought someone might be hurt or there's a fight across the street. I didn't mention the party or the karaoke because I didn't want to color the situation if someone genuinely needed help. The dispatcher thanked me and said they'd send someone to check it out. 5 minutes later, not one, not two, but 3 police cruisers roll up with lights flashing, but no sirens. Now the birthday party people are freaking out. I see guests scattering, some hiding drinks, others filming with their phones. One guy actually tried to dip behind a bush with a joint in his hand, like this was a game of hide and seek. The cops start walking up the driveway, and they ask to speak to the homeowner. That's when Hannah, the birthday girl herself, comes out, wearing a full-body inflatable T-Rex costume. I kid you not. The person lying on the lawn was her, pretending to be a dead dino during a charades game. The scream? Part of someone's karaoke rendition of Let It Go. The officers were not amused. They spent about 20 minutes sorting everything out. No arrests, thank God, but they did shut down the party. Issued a noise citation to Mr. Kindler and politely suggested everyone wrap it up. At this point, I'm feeling horrible. I didn't want the party shut down. I thought someone was hurt. I didn't expect the Jurassic Park meets Frozen situation. So, what do? Like an absolute moron, I try to smooth things over the next day. I bake cookies. I don't even like baking, but I Google a basic oatmeal chocolate chip recipe and walk them across the street like I'm in some kind of suburban sitcom. I knock on the door, and Mrs. Kindler opens it. She gives me a smile, so tight I thought her face might crack. I start my little apology speech, holding out the plate like a peace offering. Before I can even finish saying, I just wanted to say I'm sorry if Hannah walks into the entryway behind her mom and yells, "Is that him?" Mrs. Kindler turns her head like she's trying to stop a train wreck with her face, but Hannah pushes past her. She's still in pajamas and holding a half-eaten Eggo waffle. "Did you call the cops on my birthday?" she asks, deadpan. I fumble. I didn't mean to ruin anything. I just thought someone might be hurt. I heard a scream and saw you lying on the ground, and... She interrupts. That was Let It Go, and I was doing the death scene from Jurassic World. Thanks very much. Yeah, I realize that now. She stares at me, then at the cookies, then back at me. Finally, she takes one, takes a bite, and says, "They're dry." I stood there like a statue, while Mrs. Kindler muttered something about thanking the neighbor and shooed me away. Now it's been a week. I've taken 3 different routes to my car to avoid awkward encounters. Every time I open my blinds and see one of the Kindlers doing yard work, I immediately close them like a vampire seeing sunlight. The worst part? The party wasn't even that loud in hindsight. My windows were closed. I could have just put in headphones. But no, I had to go full concerned citizen and escalate things into a scene from Cops. Suburban Edition. And now, every time I see a dinosaur meme, I get heart palpitations. TIFU by trying to impress my girlfriend's family with a home-cooked meal and nearly setting the dog on fire. So for context, I, 28M, have been dating my girlfriend, Erin, 27F, for a little over a year. Things have been going really well, and a few weeks ago she suggested we do a family dinner at her parents' house. This was a big deal because I'd met her parents before briefly, but this was more like, let's see if this guy's going to be around for a while kind of vibe. Naturally, I agreed, wanting to make a good impression. Now, Erin's parents are the type that are into the whole organic, sustainable, we harvest our own kale and pray to the moon goddess kind of lifestyle. Her mom is vegan. Her dad is pescatarian but only eats fish caught by his brother, who lives in Maine. I eat like a raccoon in a Walmart parking lot, so you can see the contrast. I figured this was a great chance to show I'm making an effort. I told them I'd cook. Vegan-friendly. Homemade. I spent an entire week researching recipes, asking Reddit for tips, practicing tofu marinades, and how not to make cauliflower taste like punishment. Erin was actually really supportive and even said, "Wow, you're trying way harder than my last boyfriend," which, thanks babe, no pressure. So the day arrives. I pack up my stuff and head to her parents' place early. They live in this very Pinterest-looking house outside the city with a wood-paneled kitchen, hanging dried herbs, and approximately 73 ceramic bowls of varying sizes. Her mom greeted me with the kind of hug that's both warm and slightly judgmental. Her dad just nodded and said, "You brought the tofu?" Like we were about to enter a battle. I got to work in their kitchen. I brought my own knives. Yes, I have cooking knives. No, I don't use them often. Laid everything out and started prepping. Erin was in the living room helping her mom with candles or crystals or whatever, and I was left to channel my inner Gordon Ramsay minus the swearing. The menu was ambitious. Vegan pad thai with homemade tamarind sauce, crispy baked tofu, and coconut lime sorbet for dessert. Everything was going okay until the tofu step. I was going for that perfectly crisp edge, so I had this idea to sear it quickly in a hot pan with sesame oil before finishing it in the oven. Simple enough, right? Well, in the chaos of transferring tofu to the oven, I forgot one thing. Their dog, Clover. Clover is a rescue mutt, medium-sized, some mix of retriever and chaotic energy. Super friendly. Too friendly. She'd been hanging around the kitchen sniffing things, and I thought I was being careful. But apparently, while I was pulling the hot pan out of the oven to add the tofu, Clover decided it was the right time to run between my legs, chasing a rogue piece of bok choy that had fallen on the floor. This surprised me. I lost grip of the pan for a split second, and in that split second, the hot oil splashed out of the pan, right onto the dog's tail. Clover let out a yelp like she'd just seen the ghost of every bath she's ever had and bolted out of the kitchen at warp speed. But here's where it went from bad to absolute chaos. The oil had caught on the fluff of her tail, just a little flame, like a candle wick, but the damn dog started running around the house with her tail on fire. Erin screamed. Her dad yelled something like, "Oh, sweet spirits." Her mom flung a jug of oat milk at the dog in a panic, which hit me square in the chest instead. I dropped the tofu. The pan clattered to the floor. And Clover, still freaking out, jumped directly onto the couch and started rubbing her flaming tail into the cushions. It was pandemonium. I grabbed a throw blanket, which I later learned was hand-woven in Peru, and tackled the dog to smother the fire. Clover was okay, just singed fur and a whole lot of trauma. The couch? Not so much. One corner looked like it had been in a minor napalm strike. Erin's dad was trying to calm her mom down, who was yelling something about the sacred eucalyptus pillows. Meanwhile, Erin was looking at me like she was deciding if this was forgivable or not. I offered to pay for the damages, of course. Her dad waved it off, muttering, "It's just stuff," but you could tell he was internally constructing a voodoo doll of me. Erin took Clover to the vet the next morning, minor burns, totally fine, probably now immortal from all the herbal oils her mom smeared on her. I spent the rest of the night scrubbing tofu off the cabinets and wondering if I'd just cooked my relationship along with the dog. The worst part? We ended up ordering vegan Thai from a local place anyway, and it was infinitely better than what I was making. To this day, I'm known as the tofu arsonist in Erin's family group chat. At Christmas, they gave me an apron that says Certified Dog Flambé Chef. Her mom still side-eyes me every time I walk near the stove, and Clover hides behind furniture like I'm carrying a flamethrower instead of a leash. But hey, Erin's still with me. She even laughs about it now. Sort of. So this happened last month, and I'm still dealing with the fallout. I, 27M, had been unemployed for a few months after quitting a high-stress sales job. I was desperate for a change of pace and had been applying to any position that didn't sound soul-crushing or require wearing a tie every day. That's when I found a listing for a client relations associate at a family-run business called Stone March and Sons. The description was vague, but it emphasized empathy, organization, and communication skills. Great, I thought. Sounds like a front desk job at some old-timey consultancy or insurance office. I applied, got a call the next day, and was offered an interview on Zoom. The guy who interviewed me, let's call him Greg, was warm, soft-spoken, and very serious. We talked about my previous experience with clients, how I handle stress, and if I was comfortable being around grief. I assumed this meant handling angry customers. Grief over losing their luggage or something. I said yes. He nodded solemnly, told me I seemed like a fit, and they'd get back to me. 2 days later, I got the job. I was thrilled. Benefits, decent pay, and a 9 to 5 schedule? Sign me up. Now things started getting weird right away. On my first day, I pulled up to this big gray building with no signage except a small plaque on the front that said, Stone March and Sons, ST 1923. Inside, everything smelled like lavender and pine. There were heavy velvet curtains, classical music playing softly, and people whispering everywhere. I figured it was just a weird aesthetic. I met Greg in person for the first time, and he gave me a tour. He used words like our clients and their families and kept talking about making peace with a final transition. That's when I finally realized what kind of place this was. Stone March and Sons wasn't an insurance office. It was a funeral home. I was working at a funeral home. I had accepted a job as a funeral director's assistant, and I had no idea. At this point, I should have just excused myself and admitted there had been a mistake. But I needed the job and there was some pride involved too. So I told myself I'd just handle paperwork or something low stakes. Maybe greet people at the door, book appointments, answer phones. I could do that. Dead people don't freak me out. I watched CSI religiously in high school. Fast forward to my third day. I was sitting at my desk, trying to look busy while figuring out how to gracefully quit in a week or two, when Greg popped his head in and said, Hey, we're a little short-staffed this morning. Mind giving Jonah a hand downstairs? Downstairs. Jonah was their embalmer. I hesitated. Greg must have seen the panic in my eyes because he said, Don't worry, you won't have to do anything technical. Just assist him with setup and transport. I said yes.
Why?
I still don't know. Some combination of fear, shame, and this lingering idea that if I powered through, maybe I'd develop some kind of gallows humor and learn to love it. Spoiler, I did not. Now, I want you to imagine walking into a prep room where there are 3 bodies on gurneys, covered in white sheets. The smell was clean but heavy, like antiseptic and something ancient and organic underneath it. Jonah was this tall, gaunt guy who looked like he hadn't blinked since 2008. He nodded at me and said, Gloves are on the table. We'll start with Mr. Chapman. I helped him move a body. A real human body. It was cold, heavier than I expected, and limp in a way that haunts me. I didn't throw up. That's the best I can say. But I did disassociate so hard, I barely remember walking back upstairs after. I thought that would be the end of it. I figured they'd let me go back to the front desk and pretend that never happened.
Nope.
That Saturday, Greg called and asked if I could work a weekend service. I was surprised but said sure. I thought maybe I'd be doing crowd control, handing out programs, that sort of thing.
I was wrong again. I was part of the pallbearing team.
Let me tell you, nothing in my life prepared me for the moment when I, hungover from Friday night whiskey and still unsure how I even got this job, was walking a casket down a narrow aisle while an elderly woman sobbed uncontrollably behind me. And things just kept happening. The worst moment by far was 2 weeks in when Greg asked me to help stage a body. Apparently, this meant dressing the deceased and positioning them for an open casket. I'd like to think I've seen some shit, but nothing prepares you for putting makeup on a dead man while his picture from 1987 stares at you from the counter. I tried so hard to act normal. I asked dumb questions like, do we go with a more natural look or like wedding day level? Jonah didn't laugh. He just handed me a tie and said he was a big Steelers fan, so let's go with the yellow. That night, I sat in my car for 30 minutes, hands on the wheel, headlights illuminating the empty lot, questioning every choice I've made since age 15. The final straw came during a particularly large funeral. The family requested a dove's release. That's not unusual. What was unusual was that the person handling the doves bailed last minute, and Greg, ever the opportunist, turned to me and said, You're good with animals, right? I am not good with animals. I'm barely good with houseplants. But again, I said yes, because apparently I have no self-preservation instincts. So now picture this. I'm standing in front of 200 grieving people, holding a cage of snow-white doves, and on Greg's cue, I open it. One dove flies out beautifully.
2 follow.
Then the fourth one panics, slams into the side of the cage, and drops dead right there in my hand. I don't know what possessed me, but I panicked and yeeted the poor thing into the bushes like it would somehow revive it or make the problem go away. A kid saw. He screamed. The crowd turned. I locked eyes with the widow, who looked like she was about to faint. Greg fired me the next day. Very gently, very politely. He said, "I think maybe this isn't your calling." And he was right. Now I'm back to job hunting, and every time someone asks about that job gap on my resume, I just say brief administrative stint and pray they don't dig too deep. To this day, I still get spam mail addressed to director my name, and honestly, it haunts me more than the corpses did. TIFU by letting my coworker crash at my place and accidentally getting him involved in a fake family I invented to avoid my landlord. A few months ago, I moved into this older but charming duplex in a quiet neighborhood. The place was nice enough, and the rent was unusually affordable, which should have been my first red flag. The landlord, Mr. Halverson, was an old-school, retired Army guy with a strict family-only tenants policy. He believed single renters were too unstable and unpredictable, his words, not mine. In my desperation to get the place, I panicked and told him I had a wife and a kid who were still in transition from our previous city. Instead of asking for proof or waiting to meet them, he just nodded like he understood the trials of fatherhood and handed over the keys. I thought I'd gotten away with it. I figured I'd just keep a low profile and hope he never asked. Fast forward 3 months, and everything was going fine. I even went so far as to keep a car seat in the back of my car and kids' shoes by the door. Sometimes I'd throw on a cartoon on the TV when I knew he was coming by. The occasional white lies spiraled into a full-blown backstory about my wife, Emily, and our 4-year-old son, Noah. I even had a few stock photos printed and stuck to the fridge, in case he ever peeked in. I had no idea how deep I'd sunk until my coworker Travis got evicted from his apartment. Travis is the kind of guy who's friendly, helpful, but kinda oblivious. I offered him my couch for a few weeks while he sorted things out. He's been through a rough patch, and I thought I was doing a good deed. Day 1. Travis arrives with a duffel bag and a case of beer, makes himself at home, and starts asking why there's a stroller in the hallway. I told him everything. I shouldn't have, but I figured if he was staying, he needed to know not to blow my cover. I explained the fake wife, the imaginary kid, the whole charade. He laughed so hard I thought he was going to choke. Then he promised he'd play along if it ever came up. "I'm great at improv," he said, which in hindsight should have been a red flag. Cue Mr. Halverson showing up unexpectedly that weekend. It's Saturday morning. Travis is in his boxers, toasting a Pop-Tart in the kitchen. I'm still in bed. Halverson rings the bell, and before I can stop him, Travis opens the door. You must be Emily's brother," Halverson says, grinning like a proud uncle. Travis, without missing a beat, says, "Actually, I'm Emily." There's this 2-second pause where time folds in on itself. I sprint to the door, trying to laugh it off, but Travis, apparently channeling his inner Meryl Streep, goes full method acting. He starts doing this terrible falsetto voice and says, "Oh, you must be Mr. Halverson. So lovely to finally meet you. I've heard so much about you." I stare at him, silently begging him to stop. But he doesn't. He doubles down. He pours coffee, pulls out a chair for the landlord, and sits there cross-legged, chatting about parenting little Noah and how hard the move's been on our marriage. Halverson looks concerned, sympathetic even. I'm dying inside. Travis winks at me behind the landlord's back like this is the greatest role he's ever played. Meanwhile, Halverson starts offering marriage counseling advice and asking if we need help with daycare costs. I try to steer the conversation away, but Travis is running the show now. Eventually, Halverson leaves after inviting us to a neighborhood barbecue next weekend, which he's now insisted we attend as a family. The second the door closes, I explode. I ask Travis what the hell he was thinking. He just shrugs and says, "Dude, you said you needed backup. I gave you a performance." I tell him we need to come clean, but he says it's too late. "You've built a universe," he says. We're in the Marvel Cinematic Phase 2 of your lie. We can't stop now. For the next week, Travis becomes more invested in the character than I ever was. He starts calling me babe when we're at home. He buys a fake wedding ring. He even prints out a family calendar and hangs it on the fridge with fake school events for our fictional child. The barbecue arrives. We spend 3 hours in Halverson's backyard, surrounded by nosy neighbors asking about our journey. Travis is an absolute star. He tells everyone how we met in college, how Noah's allergic to peanuts, and how we're trying for baby number 2. I drink 6 beers in 2 hours trying to hold myself together. Then one of the neighbors, a sweet elderly woman named Doris, offers to babysit Noah so we can have a night out. She insists, says she used to work in childcare and would love the chance to help us rekindle our romance. This is the moment I realize the hole is now too deep to climb out of. So, naturally, I fake a breakup. I tell Halverson 2 days later that Emily left me and took Noah to her sister's in Arizona. I add some tears for realism. Travis even packs up his stuff and leaves dramatically, waving goodbye through the window with a suitcase in hand. Halverson hugs me, tells me to stay strong for Noah. I think it's finally over. But it's not. A week later, I get a knock on the door. It's Doris, holding a gift basket. For little Noah, she says, smiling. I know transitions are hard. I panic. I tell her Noah's asleep. She asks if she can just peek in. I tell her no. She insists. She starts walking toward the hallway. In desperation, I knock over a lamp and pretend to twist my ankle so she won't go further into the house. I end up writhing on the floor, while Doris calls an ambulance. Now I'm in a cast I don't need, fielding texts from neighbors asking if I'm okay, while maintaining the illusion of a child that never existed. And Travis? He moved into a new apartment and now insists on being called Emily whenever he visits. I live in constant fear that Halverson will one day demand to see Noah's report card or catch me without the booster seat in the car. I almost told the truth yesterday. But then I saw a flyer for the neighborhood holiday potluck and realized I've apparently volunteered to dress up as Santa for the kids, including my own imaginary one. So yeah, that's how I ended up trapped in a suburban lie with a fake wife, a fake child, and a friend who's way too committed to the bit. TIFU by trying to prank my new boss and accidentally becoming a local legend for all the wrong reasons. This happened a few months ago when I had just started a new job at a mid-sized marketing agency. It was a chill place, but they had a very work hard, play hard kind of culture. Think monthly office parties, themed Fridays, and a heavy emphasis on team bonding. As the new guy, I was trying to fit in, show I had a sense of humor, and honestly, I got way too confident way too fast. So the boss, let's call him Jeff, was known for his love of practical jokes. The guy once filled someone's entire office with balloons, another time replaced someone's chair with a toilet. Everyone laughed. It was all in good fun. When I first joined, he shook my hand and said, "Welcome aboard. Watch your back."
Cool, right?
So after about a month of working there, I decided it was time for me to prank him. I wanted to show I could roll with the culture, maybe even get a little cred. And I had what I thought was the perfect idea. Jeff drove this ancient, beat-up Volvo that he always parked in the same spot. And every day at lunch, he'd go out to his car, eat a sandwich, and scroll his phone in peace. One day, I overheard him ranting about how the neighborhood cat kept climbing on the hood of his car and leaving paw prints. That's where my dumb brain saw an opportunity.
So here's what I did.
I bought a realistic fake dead cat from a Halloween store. Like movie prop level realism. Gray fur, tongue sticking out, kind of flattened like it got run over.
Horrifying.
I thought, this'll be great. I'll put it on the hood of Jeff's car right before lunch and watch the chaos unfold. Except things didn't go exactly as planned. I sneak out a little before noon, heart pounding like I'm defusing a bomb. I place the cat on Jeff's hood, legs splayed out dramatically. From a distance, it really does look like a tragic feline accident. I even add a little bit of ketchup underneath for effect. I'm giggling like an idiot all the way back into the office. 12 o'clock hits, Jeff goes outside. A few coworkers gather at the windows. We're all waiting for him to freak out, maybe yell, maybe laugh. But instead, Jeff freezes.
Just stands there, staring.
After a moment, he pulls out his phone. I assume he's taking a picture to roast me later.
But then he starts calling someone.
Okay, still funny. Maybe he's calling his wife or something. But then he opens his trunk, grabs a blanket, and gently picks up the fake cat, wraps it up, and places it in the trunk. We're all watching, confused, when he peels out of the parking lot like a man on a mission. Turns out, Jeff didn't call his wife. He called animal control. When they didn't answer right away, he drove the dead cat to the nearest vet clinic, where he barged in demanding they try to save it. The vet techs were horrified. They unwrapped it, realized it was a fake, and called the cops because they thought someone was playing some kind of sick joke or using it to threaten someone. Meanwhile, I'm in the office, starting to panic. I didn't think it'd go this far. I thought he'd chuckle, throw the fake cat at my desk, and that'd be the end of it. But people are whispering. HR is involved. My stomach is doing backflips. And then Jeff walks back in about an hour later, face like thunder. He goes straight into his office and slams the door. About 10 minutes after that, I get an email from HR asking me to come in for a quick chat. I won't lie, I considered pretending it wasn't me. But they had security footage. Of course they did. So I came clean, explained the joke, showed them the receipt for the prop, even tried to laugh a little to lighten the mood. HR was not amused. What I didn't know is that Jeff had recently lost his actual childhood cat, the one he'd had for 17 years. He was still raw about it, which was why he'd been so emotional when he thought the neighborhood cat had gotten run over.
Yeah.
Great timing, me. I apologized to Jeff face to face. He didn't say much, just stared at me with this look of disappointment that hurt worse than if he'd yelled. HR made me attend a sensitivity workshop and write an apology email to the whole team, which was mortifying. I was sure I'd be fired, but somehow I wasn't. I think Jeff saw that I genuinely didn't mean any harm, just made a catastrophically bad judgment call. But the story didn't end there. A few days later, someone posted about it on the local subreddit. Local marketing exec tries to save dead cat, discovers it's fake. It went viral. Like, really viral. My dumb prank made the front page of r/WTF. People were speculating wildly. Some thought it was an anti-animal cruelty stunt. Others thought it was a message from a deranged ex. No one guessed it was a new hire trying to impress the boss. Eventually it died down, but I became that guy in the office. For the next few weeks, people would leave tiny fake cats on my desk. Someone printed out a missing cat poster with my face photoshopped into it. One of the partners jokingly asked if I was planning to go into taxidermy. Even Jeff eventually warmed back up to me. One Friday, I came back from lunch to find a stuffed Garfield taped to my chair with a note that said, "No hard felines." I laughed so hard I nearly cried.
So yeah.
That's how I went from new guy to office legend/accidental internet meme. I learned a couple important lessons. Read the room, don't mess with grief, and never underestimate the power of a fake dead cat to derail your career, or at least delay your promotion. Oh, and Jeff now parks in a different spot. Probably for the best. TIFU by trying to impress my crush, and ending up with a broken leg and a ruined reputation. So this happened last summer, and I'm still recovering from the emotional scars, though my leg has healed. I was 22 at the time, and I had just started working at a new office. The place had a lot of young, ambitious people, so naturally, everyone was trying to make a name for themselves. Among the people I worked with, there was this girl. Let's call her Sarah. She was absolutely stunning. One of those people who walks into a room and suddenly everyone stops talking because they've been magnetically drawn to her. She was funny, smart, and effortlessly cool. I had a massive crush on her from day one, but like the typical introvert I am, I didn't know how to approach her. I spent the first few weeks of my new job just admiring her from afar, trying to get a feel for her personality and hoping that one day I would find a way to talk to her. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't thinking about how I could impress her. Now, to give you some context, there was this team-building exercise coming up. Our company had decided to take everyone to a ropes course for the weekend. At first, I wasn't sure how I felt about it. I'm not exactly a fan of heights, and I'm not the most physically gifted person out there. But the idea of spending the whole day with Sarah and potentially impressing her changed my entire perspective. I told myself that I could do it. I could conquer my fear of heights, be the guy who takes charge, and maybe, just maybe, become a hero in Sarah's eyes. The day of the ropes course came. I woke up early, made sure I looked halfway decent, and wore my most athletic-looking outfit, some tight, performance-style shirt that was supposed to make me look like I worked out, even though I didn't. I didn't eat too much for breakfast because I didn't want to feel sluggish, but I was so pumped with adrenaline that I barely noticed my stomach grumbling. When we arrived at the ropes course, I immediately noticed that Sarah looked even better than I'd remembered, somehow. She was wearing a black athletic top and leggings, and I swear, she could have been a model. I tried not to let my nerves get the best of me, but it wasn't easy. I was so determined to make a good impression that I barely noticed the other people around me. The whole group was split into teams, and we were given a briefing on the different activities we'd be doing. There was a zip line, a high wall climb, and, of course, the ropes course itself. All of the activities were designed to test our courage and teamwork, but to me, they just seemed like obstacles between me and Sarah's approval. I told myself, I'm going to crush this. I'm going to show everyone how cool I am. But as soon as we started the zip line challenge, my confidence began to waver. We had to climb up this ridiculously tall platform and jump off it, attached to the zip line harness. People were laughing, having fun, but I was gripped with fear. I hadn't anticipated how high it would be, and when I looked down, I realized I had never been more terrified of my life. I couldn't back out, though. Everyone was watching. Sarah was watching. So, with a deep breath, I decided to just go for it. I climbed the ladder to the platform, tried to steady my shaking legs, and told myself to just jump. But as soon as I was up there, I froze. The instructor was standing below, waiting for me to take the plunge, but I was stuck. My mind was racing, and all I could hear was the blood pounding in my ears. I stood there for what felt like an eternity. My palms were sweaty, my stomach was in knots, and my heart was thumping against my chest like it was trying to escape. Sarah was in the group behind me, talking with a few colleagues, but I swear I could feel her eyes on me. The pressure was unbearable. I knew if I didn't go, I'd look like a coward in front of everyone. So, I did what any self-respecting idiot would do. I decided to try and overcome my fear by jumping off the platform in what I thought would be a stylish, confident way. I wasn't just going to fall, I was going to soar. Big mistake. I didn't exactly soar. I ended up leaping off the platform in the most awkward, graceless manner possible, my arms flailing in the air like a windmill, and I completely misjudged the distance between the platform and the zip line. Instead of gliding down smoothly, I hit the side of the platform with my legs as I passed by. Now, in hindsight, this is where things went horribly wrong. When my legs hit the platform, I twisted my ankle in a way that felt like it snapped. The pain was instant and intense. I screamed out, and the whole group stopped to look at me as I crumpled to the ground, clutching my leg. The zip line instructor rushed over, and I was helped off to the side as I tried to hide my humiliation. I was still trying to save face, though, so I acted like it wasn't that bad. I told everyone I was fine, just needed a break, but deep down, I knew something was very wrong. Long story short, it wasn't just a sprain. It turned out I had broken my leg in 2 places, which required surgery to fix. The doctors told me I'd be out of work for weeks, and that I'd be on crutches for the foreseeable future. And, to top it all off, I had to wear a cast that made me look like I'd been in some kind of tragic accident. The worst part? Sarah ended up finding out about the incident. She was actually one of the first people to come visit me in the hospital, which was sweet of her, but she just couldn't stop laughing when she saw me in my sorry state. It wasn't a mean laugh, but more like she was in shock that anyone could be so ridiculous. I couldn't tell if she was laughing with me or at me, but either way, it wasn't the impression I had hoped for. The next few weeks were a blur of awkward interactions and well-meaning coworkers asking how I was doing. Sarah, though, became one of the few people who actually checked in on me. As my legs slowly healed, I couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed, but I also kind of appreciated her visits. She was never mean about the whole thing, and I eventually started to joke about it myself. Still, I never really got to impress her in the way I wanted. And Honestly, looking back, I realize it wasn't worth trying to make a fool of myself just to get her attention. Now, whenever I think about that day, I can't help but cringe. But hey, at least I have a good story to tell. So, yeah, TIFU by trying to impress a girl with my zipline skills, only to end up with a broken leg and an even more embarrassing reputation. TIFU by trying to impress my date with my cooking skills and nearly setting my kitchen on fire. I've always considered myself a decent cook. I'm not a Michelin star chef or anything, but I can throw together a nice meal. So, when I started dating Mia, a woman I really liked, I wanted to impress her. You know the drill. Make a dinner date, show off a little, and maybe, if all goes well, she'll be thinking about me long after the night's over. We had been casually seeing each other for a couple of weeks, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. One night, we agreed to have dinner at my place. I was determined to make something special to show her I was capable of more than just microwaving frozen pizza. I wanted to cook her something homey and comforting, so I decided to make homemade lasagna from scratch. I had all the ingredients lined up: fresh pasta, a meat sauce made with beef, pork, and veal, ricotta cheese, mozzarella, you name it. The day of the date, I spent hours meticulously preparing everything. I carefully browned the meat, added the herbs, and let the sauce simmer for hours. I even made the pasta by hand, which was admittedly more work than I'd originally planned, but I was committed to getting this right. The lasagna was going to be perfect. I could already picture Mia's face when she took that first bite, her eyes lighting up with delight as she marveled at my cooking prowess. The evening arrived, and Mia showed up looking stunning, as usual. We exchanged some small talk, and I led her into the kitchen, where I had set everything up. I had a bottle of wine ready, a salad prepped, and, of course, the lasagna in the oven, just about to hit the perfect golden brown level. I slid the lasagna out of the oven, and that's when the disaster began. I didn't realize it at the time, but I had miscalculated the cooking time. It wasn't that the lasagna was undercooked. It was that I had left it in the oven just a little too long. What should have been a beautiful, cheesy top was now a charred, blackened mess. But I thought I could salvage this. Mia was standing there, smiling politely, and I didn't want to ruin the night with a kitchen disaster. So I took a deep breath and decided to just cut off the burnt bits, hoping the inside would still be edible. Big mistake. As I cut into the lasagna, I noticed something odd. Smoke started rising from the edges. It wasn't just steam. This was a full-on fire hazard. My first instinct was to grab a towel and wipe down the edges of the pan, thinking maybe it was just a little bit of burnt sauce. But as I touched the pan, I realized it was far worse than that. The entire bottom of the lasagna dish had become a smoldering, blackened ruin. The smoke intensified, and I started to smell something distinctly plastic. I immediately turned to Mia, who had clearly noticed something was off. Her smile had faded, and she was now looking at me with a mix of confusion and mild concern. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. The last thing I wanted was to ruin the night over a cooking mistake. My first thought was to put the lasagna back into the oven and let the heat fix everything, but the flames were growing, and now the smoke detector went off. At this point, Mia was looking at me in utter disbelief, and I knew I had lost all semblance of grace and composure. I tried to quickly open the window and fan the smoke out of the room, but the smoke was quickly becoming unbearable. My heart was racing. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or just pretend this was all part of some bizarre cooking performance art. Mia stood in the corner of the kitchen, awkwardly holding her wine glass. I felt like I was in some kind of surreal nightmare. Finally, I realized that the fire hazard wasn't going to go away on its own. I had to act quickly. I grabbed the baking sheet with the lasagna on it and, in a panic, tried to move it to the sink. As I did, the entire bottom of the lasagna dish crumbled apart. All the melted cheese and sauce slid off the sides like a toxic waterfall of molten disaster, some of it landing on the counter, some of it spilling onto the floor. Mia stood there, wide-eyed, as I stared at the mess that used to be my carefully planned dinner. The kitchen was filled with smoke, the once promising meal now reduced to a smoldering disaster, and my confidence had evaporated faster than the wine we hadn't even touched yet. I looked at her, completely mortified. Well, I guess we could order pizza? I muttered, my voice betraying just how much I wished I could disappear into the floor. She paused for a moment, then looked at me with a half-smile, clearly trying to make the best of the situation. Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost, she said, trying to lighten the mood. Yeah, I'm fine, I said, wiping my hands on my jeans as I tried to keep up the charade. I just, might have overdone it with the lasagna, but hey, pizza is good, right? The evening took a sharp turn from there. We ended up ordering pizza, which was fine, but it wasn't the romantic dinner I had envisioned. Mia did her best to make it a fun night, but the awkward tension from the kitchen disaster hung in the air like the smoke that still hadn't cleared out. The rest of the evening was spent with forced conversation, each of us trying to pretend everything was fine while secretly wishing we could hit the reset button. After Mia left, I sat down in my kitchen, staring at the charred remains of my ambitious lasagna attempt. I felt both ridiculous and defeated. What was supposed to be a simple dinner to impress my date had turned into a full-blown disaster, and I had no idea how to recover from it. In the end, Mia was understanding. She even texted me the next day, saying it wasn't a big deal and that we should try again sometime. But I couldn't help but feel that I had ruined my chance to make a good impression. I mean, if you can't even cook a decent lasagna, what else is there? So, I learned 2 things that night. First, never try to impress someone by cooking a dish that you're not confident in. And second, even if you end up burning the kitchen down, pizza is always an acceptable backup plan. Mia and I are still seeing each other, and I like to think she finds the whole thing funny now, but I'll never look at lasagna the same way again. TLDR, tried to impress my date with homemade lasagna, burned it to a crisp, nearly set my kitchen on fire, and ended up ordering pizza instead. Still dating her somehow. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.